I'm sure a lot of you have seen that first clip that I posted onto Reddit of the 2-second Shaper kill, and I want to go over what's going on in that clip. So Reap has a lot of built-in multipliers that other skills just don't have. Blood charges, which can be stacked up to a maximum of 5 when you hit something and don't kill it, give you an overall multiplier of 1.75 times. Reap can also overlap with itself if you're using Awaken Spell Cascade or Spell Cascade. So with Awaken Spell Cascade, you get a multiplier of up to probably times 4 on most bosses. It's really hard to hit with all 5 hits of Awaken Spell Cascade because of how Reap's hitbox is structured and how big bosses are. And lastly, Reap can use Unleash, which gives you a multiplier of times 6 if you get an extra Unleash stack from the tree and an extra Unleash stack from your helmet. And all this adds up to a times 42 multiplier, which other skills just can't reach as far as a single hit ceiling goes. As far as the rest of this build goes, it's not super creative. I'm using a Badge of the Brotherhood, Void Battery, Power Charge stacking spec, and I'm using a Fire Assassin spec with Herald of Ash and Avatar of Fire. And both of these things have been done before, both these things have been done in conjunction before, but usually with Blade Vortex, and there are some different gear choices this league. The cost of it is also super different right now because of how cheap Badge of the Brotherhood and how cheap Void Batteries are. So Badge of the Brotherhood is something like 1.5 Exalts, and Void Battery is like 20 to 50 Chaos or something like that. In short, it's a really high damage build with insane clear speed, obviously, and it has great synergy with Headhunter, which really is important to me and probably isn't as important to most players. But for me, it's almost one of the most, it's build defining for me. Whether or not I play something is as good with Headhunter. It is a really squishy build though, so you have to spend a lot of time dodging stuff, and if you stand still for too long, you'll probably die, especially when you're doing like 80 to 100% delirious T16s. In short, you're using Badge of the Brotherhood, which sets your maximum frenzy charges equal to your maximum power charges. You're getting 2 void batteries, an extra power charge on your helmet, and then you're an assassin. You generate power charges through being an assassin, and then you generate frenzy charges through a frenzy charge on hit chest, and the latter of these 2 points is super important. A lot of people forget how to generate frenzy charges, and this step you cannot miss. As for the fire part of this build, I'm using Herald of Ash and physical spells, so we have to convert all of our physical damage to fire damage. Part of that is coming from a Watcher's Eye, which needs to be divined to at least 30%. I'm getting the physical to fire conversion anger node. I'm also anointing the magmatic strikes node on my tree, and that gives me an extra 20% conversion. And then I'm using Avatar of Fire on my tree as well, which gives me the last 50% conversion I need to get to 100% physical to fire conversion on this build. So the gem links I'm going with are pretty straightforward, so I'll just go over them in short. I have a Reap main skill setup, and this is with my Spell Cascade and Unleash. Just a heads up, one of my gems is Awaken Fire Penetration right now, and this is wrong. This should be a power charge on crit. Up here I have my aura setup, so Herald of Ash, Anger, and Vitality. I also have Aspect of the Spider in my helmet, and this can be, I swap this out with Vitality depending on how I'm feeling while I'm mapping, but Aspect of the Spider is a huge damage multiplier as well. I have a cast when damage taken, a Mortal Call. I have Vol RF in here as well. And then on this side, I have my movement skill, which I'm just using Flame Dash, Second Wind, and Arcane Surge. And then my Wave Conviction, Arcanist Brand Combustion setup is a huge single target boost. And then this last setup is how I'm applying my curses. I'm actually using Bane to apply dual curse because I have one extra curse when I use my Boston Glow, or in my chest and as a baseline. Beyond this though, the skill tree is also pretty standard, but I will go over the jewels in here. This cluster jewel gives me my life leech because of Doriani's lesson. I don't think you can miss this node. There's no other source of leech on here. And then this large cluster jewel gives me my energy shield leech from this node, Essence Rush. And Seal Mender is actually a really great skill for mapping. And if somehow you don't one-shot a boss, your seals will recharge a lot faster. So it actually is a big DPS increase, but it isn't a single target damage or a single hit increase. The medium clusters are pretty good. They're nothing special though. So this one is really useful because it's used in almost every build. You have Unnerve, which is a 10% multiplier, and then you have Evil Eye, which that blind is actually super underrated, but it's also just a 5% basically more damage. This one is a really generic multi-cluster jewel. And then on this side, I'm stacking, used to be able to stack these like crazy, this fast power, but getting 2 of them is still worth it because it gives you 50% AoE once you get 2 of them. And it still gives you some damage, and then the rest of its life. I have this Watcher's Eye, and that was what I was mentioning earlier about conversion. And then this Unnatural Instinct people ask about, it's just a high value Unnatural Instinct, but you don't really need it necessarily. Like a rare jewel or like a 4-prop crit multi-jewel is just as good, if not better, for damage at least. And then this Glorious Vanity gives you Corrupted Soul, which makes you quite a bit tankier. It gives me something like, I don't know, 700, 600 base ES. And when you have so little EHP at the end of all this node gives you just far too much value to avoid or to ignore. The gear. So the easy stuff first. Badge, 2 Voids, and then 2 Circles of Anguish. Circles of Anguish are just to stack Herald of Ash damage. So the fire damage and buff effect are the 2 mods that you want all the time. That implicit, the cold damage is actually pretty good. So any source of flat damage are getting converted to fire at least in half value because of AOF, which seems kind of shit, but it actually gives a huge damage boost, which is why we're also using a Blizzard Crown. So Blizzard Crown is a ritual, I think, base implicit, and that second line of it, your cold hits treat, or your hits treat cold resist is 10% of power value, is supposed to be the downside, but because we convert all our cold damage to fire anyway, we negate this downside completely at the cost of, well, we get half value out of the implicit, but that's okay. I would really recommend using a Blizzard Crown regardless of what else you go. There's no enchant that is better than a Blizzard Crown. I think this Blizzard Crown with the Wave Conviction enchant was only like 3x, 2x? I forgot. It's pretty cheap. The belt, I'm using a Darkness Enthroned when I'm not using a Headhunter. There's a lot of options as well. I have this belt base in my stash, which I could craft later. It's a Synthesis implicit, and I think if you just look at the spell damage or power charge line, it's like 1 or 2 chaos, or maybe it's like 10 chaos, but it's also really cheap. These boots are also very, very easy to craft. I bought a Tailwind base with Dexterity on it, and then I used Ashling 4 with June. You just put her into research here, get her to rank 3, and then run Katarina. And then you can unveil movement speed, which is what I did. I unveiled move speed and onslaught on kill, and then I ended up slamming a lightning resist on that. My gloves are Asenath's Gentle Touch, and this is purely for mapping. This gives you the explosions and the chaining potential that you see in the earlier clips. But when I swap over to bosses, I use Surge Binders. So Surge Binders, you get double value out of, well, not double value, but you get a lot of value out of because of both using power and frenzy charges. It'd be great to use endurance charges as well, but we're not like a Slayer or anything. And this gives me a 140% increased damage, which is just absolutely huge. Plus, they're really cheap, like a perfect 7% LE roll and 7% spell damage roll, which is the only 2 that matter. Something like that will cost you like somewhere between 1 to 5 chaos. The flask setup is just 4 offensive flasks and a Quicksilver. Nothing, again, I think you'll see this a lot in softcore builds, and just because of how good Bottled Faith is, it gets included in almost everything. But we're really close to crit cap as it is already. Just some last thoughts I'll leave you with this Awakener kill. This build isn't what it used to be. Blade Vortex with the maxed out AoE used to just feel so much better, but I think this is probably the best shot of keeping that same feeling. I know that Bladefall, Blade Blast setups are getting some popularity still to this league, but I think that Reap really just has the highest single target potential. And for those of you who want to look for something higher damage even, try to pure Phys spec. There's a couple things on PoE Ninja where people are going pure Phys Assassin, and that's probably the best way to scale the damage. And I think honestly with Reap, Spell Cascade, Unleash, and a pure Phys, you could probably get a single hit of up to 200-300 mil in under a mirror cost. So I look forward to someone doing that someday soon.